Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. We have public comment. I do have to read something into public comment, and this is from Carol Riemer. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the East Shore, I am writing to request that the Board of Selectmen proclaim June 2022 as Gun Violence Awareness Month in Killingworth. By doing so, you will join our town with concerned citizens throughout Connecticut and across the nation who will be participating in gun violence awareness and Wear Orange activities. The Wear Orange campaign was inspired by friends of Adia Pendleton, a 15-year-old Chicago student killed by gunfire in 2013. They decided to honor her life by wearing orange on her birthday, choosing it because it was Adia's favorite color and because orange is the color hunters wear to protect themselves from being shot. We in Connecticut have a personal connection to wanting to maintain awareness of gun violence as we observe the tragic 10th anniversary of the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. The recent events in other states have highlighted that even 10 years after Sandy Hook, we need to continue to raise awareness. Although we are grateful that our state has one of the lowest rates of gun death and some of the toughest gun laws in the nation, gun violence is a public health crisis. Sadly, access to firearms in the home is associated with increased rates of homicide and suicide, as well as unintentional death and injury, particularly of children. In 2019, Connecticut had 181 firearm deaths. At 61% of the total, gun suicides accounted for the greatest number of gun deaths. By issuing a proclamation, you will be contributing to the education of Killingworth residents about the need for gun violence awareness, as well as honoring all victims of gun violence. Thank you for all you do to keep our Killingworth safe, especially during these unprecedented times. Carol Riemer's Board of Directors, League of Women Voters of the East Shore. All right, do we have other public comment? Dave.
We do. Prepared remarks, excuse me. My name is David J. Cutillo, and I rise today to speak against the proposed gun violence proclamation on this evening's agenda. While I have many objections to this proposal, I consider the following to be my most troubling concerns. This proclamation was originally intended to be presented and voted on in a special public meeting, leaving little notice to the public and no opportunity for public comment. I may only presume that it was hoped by this board that a controversial initiative could be passed without being subject to public scrutiny. I can't speak for everyone here, but this certainly troubles me. Once this was brought to our attention, Ms. Lefko and I submitted a formal written request for public comment. The agenda was then amended to reflect this request, and coincidentally, Ms. Moat Young and Mr. Annino became unavailable for that meeting, which had been such a priority that it necessitated the calling of a special meeting. The proposed proclamation is a one-sided, politically driven document. This board seeks to have Killingworth participate in Gun Violence Awareness Month, a leftist initiative cooked up and financially supported by gun control zealots and Democrat political organizations. This is no organic grassroots movement. It is well funded by powerful people. This proclamation is not only absurd on its face, declaring gun violence a public health crisis, it is not, but it is inappropriate and dangerous because of the implication that its issuance makes. There was a problem in this country, and gun owners are to blame. It's not the fact that God's been driven from the public square, nor that children are being heavily medicated and sexualized, nor is it the destruction of the family. It is not that we have allowed a sick culture to surround our children. It's law-abiding gun owners, the vast majority of whom are decent, peaceful people. You can dress it up any way you'd like, claiming that you merely wish to keep guns out of the wrong hands. But at the end of the day, there will be vast disagreement as to which are the wrong hands. Fortunately, our state constitution is unambiguous on this point. Every citizen has the right to bear arms in defense of himself and the state. Connecticut State Constitution, Article 1, Section 15. This proclamation unnecessarily drags a controversial national political issue into our town politics. This board lacks the moral authority to issue such a proclamation on behalf of our entire town, especially given that many residents disagree with it vehemently. Furthermore, the residents of Killingworth certainly don't need to be lectured about their God-given constitutionally guaranteed rights. It is unwarranted and it is insulting. Since the proclamation encourages town residents to consider so-called gun violence statistics, I encourage everyone here to examine the CDC's study on defensive use of firearms. The data indicates quite clearly that firearms are used defensively in the United States far more often than they are used offensively. An attack on gun rights is an attack on the young woman who wards off a sexual assault, the mother who prevents her children from being kidnapped, and the elderly couple who defend their lives and dignity against a would-be attacker. If you think these instances are few and far between, take a look at what the CDC had to say about this. More people defend themselves lawfully with firearms than you probably realize. They tend to keep quiet about it though, lest someone attack them in the way that this proclamation attacks the residents of Killingworth. I urge this board to refrain from using the tragic deaths of children to pull off what can only be described as a crass political stunt.
Thank you, Mr. Cutillo. Any other public comment? Dave?
Dave Long. I spent 29 years in the Air Force, 2 tours of duty in Southeast Asia. I've been shot at more than once. But those people knew what they were doing. They weren't mentally ill. There, in fact, lies the problem. Mental illness with handguns. If you look at the statistics, and I just read this the other night in the CDC and Johns Hopkins study, 50% of those crimes that were committed, the heinous crimes, were by mentally unstable individuals. There, in fact, lies the problem, not the handgun. Now, tonight, I talked to Dave earlier, I was going to wear a handgun with no ammunition, and it's just to prove a point. Handguns don't kill people. People kill people. We have to consider the long term. There was 42,000 vehicle deaths last year and 99,000 drug overdoses. What are we doing to preclude that? We need to talk to the upper level, the upper echelons in the federal government to preclude these issues from festering even anymore. And that's what I have to say. And it wasn't as eloquent as Dave was, because I get pretty emotional about this stuff. I've used handguns to protect myself in hostile environments. Not fun. But they were necessitated due to the uniform that I was wearing and that flag that I swore to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Anyone else?
Jackie Wilcox, I suspect that this proclamation did not find itself here, that it came down from somewhere. And I'm wondering what the national people are doing to protect Killingworth. What are they doing for, like Dave says, mental illness? Are they securing our schools? My understanding is the national approach is not securing schools. They're not giving enough officers. They're not doing anything to secure the schools, and most of this is happening in the schools. That should be priority number 1. Number 2 should be definitely the mental illness situation. It's not being addressed. So I don't think this is a grassroots proclamation. I think it came down from somebody and was just pushed on us.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilcox. Anyone else?
Yes, hi, Scott Hawkins, Chairman of the Parmelee Farm Committee, and I'm here this evening in hopes that our nominees that were presented to the Board of Selectmen are voted on this evening. And both Tim Gannon and myself are here in hopes of that happening for the person we nominated, Karen Milano.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else? Eileen?
I'm going to urge, Lou, hi, thanks. I'm going to urge you to take a minute and put the politics aside when it comes to this issue with Karen. Without getting into background nonsense. Bottom line is, this is a person who's really given so much to our town, given so much to Parmelee Farm. It is my understanding that this is a position that is an open position, it's a new one, an extra position. not refill, am I incorrect? Not filling a position. So we don't have that same, oh my God, it was a Democrat, we've gotta fill it with a Democrat, or it was a Republican, we've gotta fill it with a Republican. We need to take a look at what this woman's done, what her family's done, what she's willing to do, and what we hope she continues to be willing to do. Because this is somebody who really has given her heart and soul to this space. And I feel pretty strongly about that. So I just think at some point we have to put the politics aside and we have to start looking at what's good for Killingworth and what's good for these areas and people that are really good at what they do in that space. And put aside their personality, their politics, and look at what we can get accomplished as a working group of people. Because that's what we are, we hope. I'm done. That was totally off the cuff, not good, but don't care.
Annie?
I'd just like to say that I support the nomination of Karen Milano to the Parmelee Farm Committee as well. I also want to say I support the gun awareness proclamation because that's what it is. It's for gun awareness. Nobody's taking away people's guns. It's just to make people look at the devastation that's been caused by children being shot in school by, I think AR-15 rifles. I don't know guns at all. So, which essentially blows a little one apart. I don't think that, I think that it needs to be looked at more and people need to be aware of the damage that guns have that are automatic weapons. I also want to say that the League of Women Voters has sent this proclamation to many towns, and they are not a partisan group. They represent all voters, Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated. Their mission is to get people out to vote. So, you know, I don't think it came from the top. I think it came from people who are caring. And much like last month was Autism Awareness Month, June, they're trying to get June proclaimed as Gun Awareness Month, not a political thing, just an awareness thing. And I know that Guilford did the proclamation, Madison did, Brantford did, you know, the towns that I'm dealing with, Clinton, I believe, did. So I just wanted to say I'm in support of it.
Anyone else?
I want, Tim Gannon, full-length member of the Parmelee Farm Committee. Karen was our first chairman and is a very dedicated volunteer. She's unaffiliated. We can use any help we can get. So when someone says to me, Tim, I'm willing to help out at Parmelee Farm on your committee, can I join? And we don't turn anybody away if they have a sincere interest in helping us out. So I just want to continue the support of Karen. She's a past member, and we would look forward to having her back because she's a valuable person to have on the committee.
Thanks, Tim. Eileen?
Eileen Blewett, on that note, what Tim and Scott were both saying, I'm hoping that during either an agenda item or your selectmen or first selectmen comments today, that you can explain in detail the hesitation as to why you're not moving forward with putting a new member. I think that the reasoning is really important. I think that the support for Karen is one thing, but I think that there's a bigger picture here, so hopefully that can be addressed tonight. And I also think that it'd be really important for everybody here, and also I think there were 13 or 15 town residents at that publicly posted special meeting, and that I think that we deserve a reason as to why two selectmen decided to boycott and not show up that day.
Thank you, Eileen. Anyone else? All right, let's move on. Approval of minutes. I move to approve the minutes of the Monday, May 23rd, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I move to approve the minutes of the Wednesday, May 25th, 2022 special meeting of the Board of Selectmen with the following amendments. Day in the header and date at the bottom. So day in the header should be Wednesday and date at the bottom should be 5/26.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I move to approve the minutes of the June 8th, 2022 special meeting of the Board of Selectmen. Do I have a second?
I'm sorry, Nancy, that's the one I missed.
Mr.
Ah, okay. I will second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Refunds and abatements. I move to approve the refund for Behavioral Management LLC for $11.49 overpayment and allow them to follow their normal course for refund.
I will second.
Okay, no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Moving on to appointments. On the Economic Recovery Committee, we have a good problem. We have a good problem in so much as we have more people who are interested in volunteering for this town. Not only do we have 2 candidates from the Democratic Town Committee, who are replacing the 2 Democrats that left, but we also had another Democrat, Richard Pleines, reach out to me, who was also interested. And we also had a Republican, Dave Long, interested in this position. So, that said, we have a good problem. But the fact that we do have 2 letters from the, from Annie Stirna with regards to, the appointment of Gwen Selmer and Dan Colonia, those would take precedence.
I would like to move that we appoint both of those individuals to the Economic Recovery Committee.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Was that for-
Parmelee,
Was that for Richard and Dave? No.
pardon?
No. I was gonna say there was excellent choices.
So, getting back to Parmelee Farm. So, at the time, when we looked at nominating Karen, there was no vacancies left. Michael Greenaway had been appointed, and that was the challenge in whether or not we appoint another member. Now, Lou had made a good suggestion, and I had mentioned it to you, Tim, as well, that perhaps it's time for Parmelee to form some sort of a executive committee where they could nominate their own. But that would mean that we likely would have to have a bylaws change. It would have to be similar to the library, where we would appoint 2 members to be on Parmelee, as an example, for oversight. And at the same time, you could appoint as many members as need be. Now, I don't know what your bylaws, there's nothing in our charter that indicates how many members you have. Is there anything in your bylaws?
I don't know that we need to solve that problem now. I think it's like the last subject. It's a good problem to have because you got people that are willing to volunteer and you've done spectacular work over there. And I would never want to see anybody excluded. It's just hard to manage with the process that we have with that number more or less floating. And also, I also respect the idea of you wanting to spend time with folks and feel comfortable that they're going to be, positive contributors to the organization. So I was just looking for some way for us to kind of manage, you know, some kind of compromise that would work for really
Well,
the charter and the,
Yeah, I went
and the
to,
farm.
I mean, I know that it's gonna be a while before the charter commission gets their adjustments made. And I have spoken up at the Charter Revision Commission meeting, our first public meeting, about possible solutions to the problem. And so we're discussing it, and, but that will be for, you know, that's a while off. So in the interim, if somebody is willing to help us, we would like to have them appointed to the committee. Once the charter revision group meets and discusses that, hopefully by then, a solution to the future would be resolved. So in the interim, we would hope that you would be willing to appoint Karen to the committee. And then we're working with charter revision to some possible solutions for non-elected committees for the town.
I would like to make a motion to accept the recommendation and nominate Karen Milano to the Parmelee Farm Committee.
I'll second that. And absolutely, this is the right thing to do.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
So, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, department reports. Kathy?
Kathy Zandy, Board of Education. Hello, everyone. Here's my lovely summary provided by our communications group. So for the month of May, first of all, we started with Cougar Pride, which is always our favorite section. Superintendent, we recognized leadership from a number of elementary schools. Students at BES and KES, including Maeve Brown of KES. She initiated on her own a pajama day to raise money to save Deer Lake. So I think she made over $3,000, which is pretty impressive. Secondly, the Connecticut Association of Schools recognized HKMS 8th grade scholar leaders Catherine Wen and Tetsuya Imai at a ceremony in June. They actually came to the board and gave a middle school report as well, which was great. And finally, last but certainly not least, the board recognized and congratulated Principal Donna Hayward of the high school, who won the Connecticut Association of Schools Principal of the Year.
Wow.
Which is great. We're planning a bigger notification than just that, but there's a lot of other stuff going on in the school at the moment, so stay tuned for more on that. So the strategic plan, as you know, we've worked on the vision of the graduate. That's done and dusted, but we're now working on the strategic plan. So our co-chair, Prem Ithal, presented and the board approved the goals and objectives for the RSD 17 strategic plan. 4 goals were identified through stakeholder input. So goal 1 is student learning and well-being. Goal 2 is educator and leadership development and capacity. Goal number 3, operational efficiency, and number 4 is enhanced district infrastructure. Okay. I'm going to say this again at the end, but all that information is on the website. So if strategic planning is your thing, please go and read all the details. There's a beautiful, beautiful summary in there. So under each goal, the board has identified numerous 1 to 5 year objectives for the district to reach. Superintendent Wibby is going to spend the summer with his administrators, teachers, and staff to determine how to enact those within the schools. So we're hearing more on that from me in the coming months. Okay, so facilities. So Peter Sonsky of our facilities subcommittee presented our cap report. This is the annual capital report and the projection for the year-end balance. The board approved spending a little over $500,000, $571,188.48 to work on high priority items in the capital report. So we were able to do that because the budget passed with a higher percentage of the going to capital as before. The money comes out of the capital fund. They'll be completed over the summer of 2022. Exciting things like replacing the parking lot at Burr, the cafeteria floor, and the fire alarm system at the high school. All of which have been put off for several years, so they're due. And again, all that information is also on the website. Budgets is your thing. Donations. So we had 2 with appreciation. Got 2 donations from I'm gonna butcher this one's last name, Carol Riemer and Catherine Godric into the student activity account to fund for camperships for students in need at the end of the school year. and a wood bench from Eric Hawkins, parent of 2 KES students, to be used at the lower parade on in KES. So those are both submitted into the KES fund. Okay. Food services, so Sharon Shuttleworth, our Director of Food Services, presented our healthy food certification option, and the board approved the food and sale of beverages at extracurricular activities such as games, plays, and interscholastic competitions. What this basically means is that during the school day, because we have healthy food certification and the board approved that, they can only serve certain options for snacks. So their snacks have to be healthy and approved, and so they can't have you don't have a soda machine at the high school. You don't have, donuts being sold during snack in school. But we have an exception for things like soccer games and basketball games and stuff. They can actually sell candy and pizza and stuff like that aren't as healthy choices, even though it's on school campus, because it's off the school hours. So just as an explanation of that. So our calendar, the 2022-2023, we included 5 half-days for professional development for teachers and staff in that. And finally, I'm going to plug the website, rst17.org, has all this information I speak to and much more if anyone is interested.
Thank you.
That was the speed round today.
Yeah. So in your packet, there are reports from the health department, as well as the building report, and I know, Lou, you had requested additional information about open permits, and we have a hefty list of open permits, and now don't get me wrong, there needs to be some work here.
Okay.
I agree it's important to see the percentage as we continue to dwindle this down, but we have some open permits from 2013 that have to be closed out.
Okay.
And Robin said she's going to commit to that. She's got to go through this list. Working together, we will make sure that this becomes easier and easier to digest, because if you look at this, there's
What we need
pages.
is, we need the executive summary of that.
This is what she gave me. I said,
Yeah.
give it to me as an Excel so I could summarize it up.
Yeah.
But then we could break it down by year, so we know that there's some that are older.
It almost doesn't matter though, whether it's old or not.
Yeah, and it's gotta
what's
get-
open, and
Correct.
what's closed, who's it assigned to, and that we're seeing progress towards
Towards this.
commitment.
And the one thing that's clear here, there's several, so one permit could be, or one address could be 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 permits.
Yeah.
So trying to break those down and trying to do it in such a way, and I know Richard has been working with Robin on trying to figure out roofs, sheds, and pools, because if you go in and you're gonna go look at a roof, is there something open on the shed? Can I get that closed? So they're looking at ways to organize this in such a way to make it easier to close out some of these permits. So it's a work in progress. I'm on it. We'll
Okay.
figure it out.
But just a couple of parts to that. The state has given us the latitude when they're 9 years old, that they're automatically closed out. But a note's put in the file that it was closed out without inspection. So eventually what happens is, and we're running into it a lot down in Clinton right now, is house sales are going on and the attorneys are using a new program and it's flagging open inspections and open permits. And usually I get the call on the 11th hour to go close them out. So we've actually held up closings now because the attorneys are finding them, even if they're older than 9. We don't have to chase them over 9 years now. But I had Robin run a list for me today. There's 36 swimming pools in town that have never been inspected and closed out. So to me, I'm gonna concentrate on that first because that's a life safety issue.
Right.
Yeah, and I would much rather see us properly close out those permits than for us to let them, automatically.
It's a liability.
Cause, well, it's a liability for sure, but then the homeowner, who in some ways they earned it because they didn't get their final inspections, but when the time comes for those estates to change hands or the house to sell, it becomes this encumbered piece of property.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, as you well know, I'm telling you your job, this stuff is buried in a wall somewhere. So I really would like to see that stuff cleaned up.
Yeah, and that's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
She'll be able to provide that to us in Excel. We can kind of look at it from on a more routine basis. Probably right now, we'll do it at every selectmen's meeting, just so that we get caught up on this. All right, you also have, I believe there was so we have the building report, we have the environmental reporting. There is also the tax collector's report. She's 101% of budget.
That's good.
So she's over collected.
That's why we keep approving these over payments here.
Yeah. Moving on, DPW, there's nothing in your packet, but we're starting to see escalation costs now on asphalt. So they're typically $10.50 to $11 per ton over. So on the 21-22 sectional overlay of Lover's Lane, it's expected to be $2,144 over the covered, over what we expected.
What is the current rate per ton?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have that number in front of me. Lover's Lane, we can be covered in the highway other budget for this year.
Mm-hmm.
But going into 22-23, mill and fill is expected to be $10,890 over budget. That's not terrible. That's underneath our reporting. What I'm more concerned about is sectional overlay, expected to be about $58,000 over budget. So that would be a call to town meeting to figure out at least to let people know that.
Is that the total budget, 58,000?
58,000, the sectional overlay, there's Victoria, I think it's Victoria Lane, I gotta go back and
What's the
look.
total amount, do you know?
I don't know, want me to get my book?
No.
But
I understand that,
it's a big number.
yeah.
So, in terms of next steps, let's figure out when they're gonna pull the trigger on this, and then figure out, I'll spend some time with Gina. She's not available tonight. So we'll sort that out and we'll get back to you by the next meeting.
Okay.
All right, on fiscal year 21-22, there are 2 items likely to go to town meeting anyways. One is the legal fees, that is over the $20,000 threshold. And then remaining invoices are likely to push snow to town meeting as well. So if we're gonna do town meeting, we probably will be doing the sectional overlay together with those 2 as we move forward.
I'm sorry, the snow is, are we getting invoices for snow removal?
We picked up sand, so we just got in an invoice for sand.
But that's new material for next year?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
But it'll push us over the $20,000 threshold for this year.
All right.
All right, new business, through town events, we have 2. One is the Vista Tour de Jour, even hard for me to say. And then the other one is Summer Breeze Ride for Autism. I move that we approve these 2 events and let them go their course for approval.
A second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Gun Violence Awareness Month. So Lou, I have drafted a proclamation, and we've heard from the folks here. I'm not prepared to move this forward. We don't have Jamie with us tonight, but the draft proclamation is such. Whereas June is Gun Violence Awareness Month, whereas there have been thousands of mass shootings since Sandy Hook. Whereas Killingworth residents are encouraged to reflect on gun violence statistics and consider actions to reduce gun violence. Whereas Killingworth residents are encouraged to support annual Wear Orange campaign activities. Whereas Killingworth residents should identify those at risk of imminent harm to self or others. Whereas Killingworth residents must promote school safety, and I say must. Whereas Killingworth residents must promote gun safety. Now therefore, let it be resolved that the Board of Selectmen declare June 2022 Gun Violence Awareness Month in Killingworth, and to take actions to raise gun violence awareness in our community. I made this very specific to Killingworth, but again, I'm not ready to vote on it. We have another meeting in June. I'd rather you spend some time, look at it, and then we can discuss it at our next meeting. Did I give you a copy of that? You did. Oh, so you have it, Carol? Yeah. Okay. All right. Old business, approval dispersal process for ARPA funds. Gina has given us her, in the form of an email, her recommended policy and procedures for spending ARPA funds. And the town has received an email from the state regarding the second tranche, I should say. And the state has not received the money from the federal government as yet. When they do, they will have to get it out to the towns within 30 days. We will then have to go through a portal process to certify receipt of those monies. But I think what she has put forth here is, she was going back and forth about the town of Killingworth elected the flat standard allowance for lost revenue as recommended for small non-entity units receiving under 10 million. And what if we want to give funds to agencies that fall outside of our normal governmental services? So the feedback that she got was, an argument that can be used in favor of using the funds in this manner is that if the town has traditionally provided economic development grant support, if so, it could fall as government service based on that rationale. You know, she's got a lot of stuff baked in here, but I think the point is, I think we're okay based on what I'm reading here. And I think Christine Cutillo as well had spoken about the fact that even in Clinton, they were accepting applications from other businesses as well. The other thing, she talked about the final rule, and I think at the end, if I read through this, at the end of the day, I think it's important that we do go to town meeting for all of these, just to make sure there's transparency. I don't know if we have to formally approve this. This is just a recommendation based on her feedback. But I think the direction we're heading in makes sense. Any further discussion?
So how do we turn this into something that's actionable?
I know, she just gave us something that's just an email.
Right.
So I don't know if we have to figure out a policy, an interim policy. I think that's where it's going.
Okay.
Let me draft an interim policy for our next meeting.
So I think from where, having read through this, it appears to me that certainly if it falls within the town financial administrative systems, I think that it's, we've got the pieces in place that we need. I think that where it appears from her research that the ones that do not, like the not-for-profits or other organizations, that what's important based on her recommendation is some accountability for the spending, some way that we can demonstrate some auditing process.
Well, even in the KBFC.
I'm less concerned about that, and the reason I'm less concerned about that is we're asking for something that we don't get now for their current spending. So it's
I get where you're coming from. You're saying that it's outside of our normal process. We need an interim policy for that, to cover that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, and then I think that there was also a recommendation, if there was, and I'm gonna recommend it again, that there be some criteria that's set up by the committee for evaluating projects before they are recommended for funding. Some sort of criteria that we're gauging projects against. And that should be predetermined, so that then you can use that as the yardstick to evaluate whether the projects meet the criteria, whatever that we decide, the town, the Economic Recovery Committee. So let's work together on putting those things together.
Alright.
All right?
Sounds like a plan. Neighborhood Assistance Act, so just for everybody's edification, the Connecticut Neighborhood Assistance Act tax credit program is designed to provide funding for municipal and tax exempt organizations by providing a corporation business tax credit for businesses who make cash contributions to these entities. A nonprofit organization is limited to receiving $150,000 in contributions in the aggregate. I move to approve the Neighborhood Assistance Act applications for Pathfinders, the Killingworth Library Association, and Killingworth Land Conservation Trust, and submit them to the state.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Just as a matter of fact, Parmelee could also, in the future, these were, I had sent out emails earlier about this. It has to be done by July 1st, so this is why we had a public hearing this evening. But think about this for next year. Any not-for-profit can look for these acts and then start collecting business funds. They get the tax credit if they donate to you. Alright, Beechwood. Regarding open questions, before we commit to a fair rent commission, Christine Cutillo provided the following update. The CT Council of Municipalities, CCM, are researching the questions raised by the Board of Selectmen and expect to offer a toolkit for fact sheet midsummer. So that's in the works. Rafi Podolsky, attorney for Legal Assistance Resource Center of Connecticut, recommends using Clinton and Westbrook as models for our ordinance. And I also received communications from Zachary McCowan with CCM, and I've included that here, but it looks as if there's not a lot of research done on the cost to the town. We don't know what the what the possible legal fees may be. That's the gaping hole. But Rafi's reaching out to you guys if you have any questions.
I spoke to him today at length, and I communicated with him by email. I asked him, if he could provide me some additional information. He suggested I call him, and it was helpful. It seems to me that it's fairly straightforward. He did not feel that there's a lot of there's not a lot of risk in terms of the town absorbing significant legal fees. In his experience, 90%, I don't know, those are my words, but a high percentage of these cases tend to get taken care of before they ever go the legal route.
Correct.
The only way they go the legal route is if either the renter or the landlord does not comply with whatever the direction is of the committee. So it seemed to me to be a fairly benign and actually very helpful committee to put in place. It meets ad hoc, so it's not a heavy administrative load, and I can't imagine that in this town there's going to be a lot of need for that. But it's certainly is we've got a big community there, It's an asset to the town for a lot of different reasons, and those particular mobile home parks have become a target for investors that have created this kind of stir.
Correct.
And so I think that it's probably something that we should move on sooner than later. At least that's from where I sit.
Thank you, because that's where I've been for a while, but I wanted to make sure you made that journey through that. It's not we don't know when we're gonna need it, we don't know if we're gonna need it, but the point is, if we put it in place, we have it for those folks that are in Beechwood, and when they're ready to pull the trigger, it's there. I also spoke with Consumer Protection over the last week. There's a couple of filings from Beechwood with Consumer Protection. So there's a number of things going on that I think it's time that we move forward. I know Jamie's out. I would recommend that at our July 11th meeting, we get ready to pull the trigger on initiating or charging a fair rent commission and all the process that goes with it. All right, good. Thank you. On the bid award, I move to award MCC Monument Conservation Cooperative LLC the gravestone bid to complete 35 gravestones. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? I think this is at Union District Cemetery, yes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I was waiting for Park and Rec to come sliding in with a particular bid, but they're not here, so we'll move on. Selectmen's comments, anything, Lou?
No.
All right, first Selectmen's comments. Good news. Killingworth Land Conservation Trust was awarded a $78,000 grant to purchase the Duffy Greer property. This property, located on Route 80, lies between other already preserved Killingworth Land Conservation Trust properties, Winkle's Pond Reserve. To the east, contains an extremely healthy wetland pond system and a rookery with the great blue heron, and the Winkle Pond Trail abuts the property to the west. KLCT will add a trail on this property and a parking area to complement the existing trail. It's all good stuff.
Was
I'm so
this the
excited.
parcel that they applied for the Neighborhood Assistance Act funds for?
I don't know, they applied for a grant. Now, in my mind, I sort of thought, well, did the state finally give us a wink and a wink and a nod because they didn't give us anything for Deer Lake? But hey, I'll take anything. I'll take anything that we can get, so I'm super excited about that. Also, I, together with the members of the BOS and BOF of Haddam, met with members of the BOE regarding the strategic planning for the district. I think you've got the information. We were presented with an educational facilities assessment performed by the BOE last year. The assessment includes all 4 buildings, and facilities planning will continue with an expected series of meetings again in the fall to collect stakeholder input. So we're looking at a big number here. We're upwards of $120 million to bring all 4 schools up to code correctly, but we have to figure out the best methodology to do it. HK Youth and Family Services has requested a meeting with Haddam and Killingworth for selectmen and BOF chairs to discuss some financial and staffing challenges. This meeting is scheduled for June 23rd at 10 a.m. I don't know if you're available.
Meetings during the day are tough.
I know. It's challenging too, if you're there, then I've got to call a special meeting, then I got to take minutes, but I will bring back any information that I find, but certainly that's something that's going on. And then not lastly, there have been a number of shed break-ins reported at Beechwood in particular. They've had 11 sheds broken into. They leave their sheds open during the day because they want to make sure that they get rid of all the gas fumes, etc. Next thing you know, there's the grab and go. So we also had a car stolen last night on Tower Hill. the keys were left in it. So, lock your car, take your keys. One thing I'm gonna bring to your attention, River Road, and this is gonna harken back to your planning and zoning days. There is a subdivision on River Road. It was a single-family home turned into 3 units. And on the planning and zoning diagram, there is a water tank that is included in the diagram. The one gentleman purchased the home, the existing home. We have two other.
It's a fire protection tank?
Fire protection tank. And then 2 other building permits were set up for 2 more buildings. The fire protection tank has not gone in. We have one homeowner requesting a CO, and I received a letterhead from Downey Venuti saying he will not sign the CO until we have a plan for the water tank. So, just wanting you to know,
Where,
51 River Road.
3-house subdivision.
61, 51, 41.
Whereabouts?
Paper Mill,
It's the one with
Paper Mill, River Road, where it crosses the river.
and that foundation's been there for years now?
This is the unimproved part of that road? That
Yeah,
one?
not as, the tank was originally slated to be up on Paper Mill.
Yeah.
It never went in. I picked it up 2 years ago on the site plan and gave it to Kathy. That's when it all started.
Mhm.
So now you have 2 houses down in basically the old gravel pit right next to the river. And one is complete, one is half complete.
So I'm sending a letter to all 3 homeowners indicating that we have this problem. I'm gonna talk with Tom tomorrow, but I just wanted you to be aware.
Do we know if the project is bonded?
Killingworth has a problem with making sure they bond things. It was never bonded.
They don't always have to be bonded, but
Right.
I don't know this one. I'm
And
not
then I
familiar
think
with.
the original owner passed away. So now you have to try to deal with the
Yeah,
estate.
it's a state. But at this point, I have to send a letter to all 3 homeowners indicating this particular homeowner cannot get a CO until we come to an agreement on the installation of the water tank.
Do we have any idea what the cost of the installation is?
50? What are you thinking?
I've heard 30, but you can't get fiberglass tanks right now.
It's concrete.
So they're going to concrete tanks. Cause we got 8 going in down in Clinton, they can't get glass.
So, giving you a heads up. We'll see how this goes from here.
All right.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
This meeting is adjourned at 7:52.